94.3.
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Hrishi.K.
Welcome on. We're streaming audio online all over the nation. www.onecast.in, numeral 1cast.in. 94.3 on the FM band on your radio sets right here in Mumbai City. And only if you're not driving, statutory warning, you're in the backseat of a radio taxi, a chauffeur-driven car, at home, at work, and you want to stream some video live. We have Facebook Live now at RadioOne.mum. That's facebook.com/RadioOne.mum. Mark Inglis, the only double amputee ever to scale Mount Everest, is here. Mark, wonderful to see you. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you. Always great to be back in Mumbai.
Wonderful. Let's start with how you lost both your legs. I believe you were trying to summit Cook's Mountain. This is in New Zealand?
I used to be a professional mountaineer as a young man, and I was a search and rescue mountaineer, and it was on a training climb. The weather turned bad and we got trapped right on the summit of Mount Cook, our highest mountain in New Zealand, in a small ice cave for 13 and a half days, 324 hours. And the result of that was severe frostbite of our feet. Yeah. And
how many of you were in that cave?
There was only room for just the two of us. Yes, yeah, just two. So Phil and I, and we both lost both legs just below the knee. We both had them amputated of all days on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Way back in 1982 when I was a 23-year-old. So I've lived most of my life now with no legs, or well, at least not with my own, with ones I borrow. Yeah.
And when you were in that cave, they always say the survival instinct kicks in. But when you have no food and water, and I assume you didn't have any food and water, how do you stay alive?
Well, it's all about the decisions that we make, you know. And one of the things I do with my talks when I'm working with corporate groups is talk about life is about decision making. We were very fortunate in that, being a search and rescue mountaineer, I had the answers. You know, I had the knowledge. And so that was incredibly empowering. But I also had the absolute faith that if I can survive, someone will get to me. You know, so the first few days we tried to climb out ourselves, but it was the worst weather in New Zealand history at the time. And so there was no chance of getting out. And so once we knew that, it was just that total focus every second on staying alive. And that's what you need. It's that total focus.
So it was just mind over matter, like they say. Yeah, it's just the mind that controlled it, and you got through that.
Your mind controls it. Your body will run out eventually. And we came to within perhaps 18 hours of our bodies running out of life. But your mind should never run out of life.
Wow. So when you came down and you were wheeled into the hospital, did the doctors give you an option? Or did they say that you just have to get your legs amputated?
No, we were very optimistic. You know, we were helicoptered off the summit on a very small window of good weather. It went bad for another 19 days, so we were very lucky to survive. We thought that we would lose toes, you know, but that's a bit of an occupational hazard as a mountaineer. You know, lots of mountaineers lose toes. That's okay. But it took many weeks in hospital, perhaps 3 weeks, before we realised that we were going to have to lose our whole lower legs. But you have time to process that. You have time, you know, there's not a lot to do lying on a bed in hospital, but to think and to process it. You know, by the time we had to have our legs off, which was on the Christmas Eve, it was time. It was, hey, let's just chop them off and give me a life. Let me get out of here. And so much of survival on the mountains, but also so much of what we do with our life afterwards, comes down to our attitude.
No, but I don't understand. Was the frostbite so severe that it could spread to other parts of your body, and that's why your legs had to go?
It doesn't spread so much, but it's the infection that happens. So you get gangrene, and we'd been through 2 cycles of gangrene, and the very, very strong antibiotics that you need were killing us. You know, so in many ways we had no choice, because the frostbite, the gangrene, the rotting feet were killing us. But by the same time, it was also felt like a choice, in that as soon as they were cut off, you had a fresh start.
So we were at your story till you got into the hospital and the decision for the double amputation had happened. And you said that you spent a considerable amount of time in bed trying to prepare yourself for that. During that time, did you also go through people or companies that make these legs, these artificial limbs?
Well, this was a long time ago. This is 1982, so the options were very, very limited, not like you have now. And so there was only one choice, there was only one supplier, one prosthetics, the New Zealand government, and you got a very basic leg. And 1982, that was it. And so it was less about what's available and more about make the most of the one thing that is there. And that's actually stood me in really good stead, because many people rush about and they try and find the absolute best prosthetic, when actually the focus should always be on using the one that you've got to the absolute best. Most of the legs for below knee amputees, they'll do 99% of everything, but you just have to try, you just have to persevere, and so that set me up really well, I think, for the future. A lot of the things that I do, no one makes my legs for me, and so I have to make my own. Climbing legs, there's not a big market for, mountaineering legs for a double amputee, and so I've had to make my own. Same with cycling, skiing. So very much the focus has been, if someone else can't do it well enough, do it yourself.
Wow. So how do you get back on your feet, as it were? I know it's a bit of a ironical statement to make, but with your prosthetic limb, you started cycling first, did you? Before you eventually got onto mountaineering? Because I know that there's a history of doing so well at the Paralympics. We'll come to that. But how did you get back your paces of getting into physical activity again?
Well, for any new amputee, it is there is a perhaps 1 month when you get up and you start walking and you feel pretty good. Then there is 6 months when you think you're doing really well, but it probably takes 2 years for your stumps to settle down and for you to get a real vision of what is possible. And so we went through all of that. And so start walking with 2 walking sticks. 1 month you throw one away, and a few months later you throw the other walking stick away. That's the great thing for me was being a young mountaineer. It was just another mountain, just another technical climbing route to do in many ways. So it is just working. It's lots and lots of stumbling blocks on the way. You damage your stumps, you have to stop, you have to rest, you have to take days to recover. But the biggest thing is never get downtrodden. Always look forward, always look positive, and that can be pretty hard at times.
Did your emotions get the better of you? Because all this is very practical, but there are times when you probably would question, saying, why me? Did that happen at points?
One of the things about being a mountaineer is that every time you do a climb, it is like an exam.
Wow. And
when you come out of that exam, you know in your own heart whether you got an A or a B or a C. I got a C minus, It's I survived it. You don't want to get an E. And so it's so much of that is I know on myself. And that means that I can take the responsibility for it myself, and I don't have to worry about giving that responsibility, blaming someone else. The only blame is on me, and so the only way to fix it is to get on with it. And that is 99% of the time. The other 1% of the time hurts. And it is always trying to look forward. I always say it's a little bit like being buried in mud. Mud right up to your chin. And the best thing that you can possibly do then is to look up and always keep your head up, because that will keep you out of the mud. It's when your chin drops and your head drops, that's when you bury in the mud. So it's keeping the chin up, looking up. That is what I have to come back to in my own mind when you have tough days.
It's a wonderful lesson to hang on to. More with Mark Inglis, the only double amputee to climb Everest. We're going to talk about how he went to the Paralympics and then went on eventually to climb Mount Everest. Don't go anywhere. ZZ Top, give me all your loving. Very, very important. If you want Mark to speak, he's a public speaker of great repute, and I think these stories could really inspire not just individuals but entire communities. It's info@speakingminds.com. info@speakingminds, speakingminds.com. Just drop an email and they'll hook it up for you. Yes, ZZ Top. Welcome back. The incredible life story of Mark Inglis, the only double amputee to summit Mount Everest, trapped in an ice cave at minus 30 degrees Celsius for 14 days with no food, no water, no equipment. When he tried to summit do a rescue mission in Cook's Mountain in New Zealand. Mark unfortunately had to have both his legs amputated. Subsequently, with a prosthetic limb, he has bounced back and a silver medalist in the Paralympics, the only one for New Zealand, and then gone on to summit Mount Everest. So that's for those of you who tuned in late, and now we catch up on the story. So then you start getting used to your prosthetic limbs, and then you start cycling. Was the goal the Paralympics? Did somebody tell you should do that, or did it come from within yourself?
Definitely comes from within yourself. The Paralympic movement was a great add-on. I wanted to go fast. I wanted to have the elegance of movement that I had with legs. I've done it through skiing, and I've raced internationally skiing, but it's hard to go skiing every day, but you can ride your bike every day. And so I got out and I started riding and realized that I can do something here. I designed a new type of cycling leg that allowed me to have the feel of cycling just like I had real legs, because that's when you've got it right. But to really prove that, it was like, well, you need to race. Every great car out there has a race heritage to it. Every motorbike has a race heritage. Every leg should have a race heritage. And so that's when I started training. It took me 3 years of intensive training to get to the level to be able to go to the Paralympics, to be selected first, to go through international competition, to be selected for New Zealand. And New Zealand had never won a medal at cycling. And then in 2000, it was the 18th of October. Remember the day. It was fantastic. It was, I thought I'd had the gold until the best rider in the world, who was 0.2 of a second faster than me, rode. But it didn't matter. I still carry that medal in my bag whenever I travel, because it's a fantastic reminder of how hard you really have to work. How hard you really have to work at to achieve. But it's also a reminder of that 0.2 of a second. What could I have done better? But to go home with New Zealand's first ever silver medal, first ever medal in cycling, that was amazing.
How did it feel on the podium, Mark, when the national anthem was playing, and you had your moment there when the medal came onto your neck?
Well, Mr. Samrach himself put the medal around my neck.
Juan Antonio Samrach.
Yeah, but guess what? I wasn't thinking about that at all. In my mind's eye, all I could see is the summit of Mount Cook. I thought, I need to go back and stand there again. I need to go back and climb Mount Cook again. It had taken me a lot of years to understand the level of ability that you need to make these things work really well. I don't want to be dragged up a mountain. I want to climb it myself. And I went home, and that's what I did.
And you obviously had to get special legs made for climbing, and like you said, for cycling, you designed one yourself. Did you have to do that for mountaineering? Yeah,
absolutely. Mountaineering legs. No one had really done significant mountaineering, making the most of being an amputee. Everyone else had just tried to put a mountaineering boot on a leg. I don't need a boot. I need a Vibram sole on a carbon fibre foot. I need the ability to put a crampon on and off. and I need, quite unusually, and very hard for engineers to understand, I need a rigid leg that allows me to have accurate foot placement. Everyone wants to design some spring into things. The more intricate the leg, the better the leg, and so I had to turn that all the way around and make the most basic leg that was rigid, so I could control my foot, and that's what I did.
Okay, Mark's on Instagram. Would you give out the handle again, please?
My Instagram's actually Woodbank Road.
At Woodbank Road, where the road is just RD. And of course, he's also on Facebook, Mark Inglis, motivational speaker. You could also go check out the Speaking Minds Global at Speaking Minds Global Facebook page, and you could also check out Speaking Minds on Instagram. Just the mandatories again. We are streaming audio online all over the nation, www.onecast.in, numeral 1cast.in. So if you want people to be inspired by the real life tale of Mark Inglis, you might want to tell your friends and family across the country. 94.3 on the FM band on your radio sets right here in Mumbai City. Only if you're not driving, statutory warning, you're in the backseat of a radio taxi, chauffeur-driven car at home, at work. You want to stream some video in our Twitter live at HRISHIKY. Previous live sessions can be found at Instagram, HRISHIKY, and Facebook.com/radio1.mum. So you win the silver at the Paralympics, but like you said, in the back of your mind is, I've got to go to Cook's Mountain, summit that. So Everest was just a dream at that point in time, or was that one of your long-term goals too? So let's start with Cook's and then going on to Everest.
For every young New Zealand mountaineer, and I started climbing when I was 12 years old, you need to do Everest. I'm
going to interrupt you here. One of my earliest memories as a little child is being taken up into the mountains by my dad and going into the museum at the foot of the Himalayas, where there are these wonderful life-size figurines of Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary. And Edmund Hillary was Kiwi, a great man who was the first to summit Everest.
Absolutely, and to follow in the footsteps of Sir Edmund Hillary, it's like being it's like making the Indian cricket team. It's
that's a nice analogy.
And so it's always been in the back of the mind. And when I lost my legs, I honestly thought I'd lost the opportunity, I'd lost the ability to make that dream come true. But riding at the Paralympics and then standing on top of Mount Cook again, knowing that I could technically climb as well as I could with legs, I instantly knew that I could get Everest again. I could get that dream back. And that's when I gave up my full-time job as a winemaker and started the planning. You can't be a full-time winemaker and be a double amputee climber on Everest as well, because it just takes so much of your life, so much training to be able to do it. And I started on that journey. In 2004 I climbed the sixth highest in the world, Choyu, and you look out and you see right in front of you Everest just sitting right there. It's only one day's climbing higher. Wow, that one day's climbing higher is 10 times harder. Went home, trained harder, and in 2006, I had my opportunity.
Wow. And when you were on top of Everest, can you describe in words what you feel like? Difficult, but try.
It's this dichotomy. It's this great elation of being there. It's just so hard that the instant that you're on the top, it's this wave of relief that you've made it. But instantly, there's this incredible fear, because to get down is the real challenge on Everest. 80% of the people that die on Mount Everest die on the way down. For a double amputee to climb down is much, much harder than climbing up. It takes me 3 times longer to climb down a mountain than it does to climb up.
Wow.
And for me, the summit was a relief, but it was, let's just put that to one side, because the one thing in mountaineering, you always celebrate the summit when you're back at the bottom. The great feeling in mountaineering is when you sit at the bottom and you look up and I did that. I had to put that to one side. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life was climb down that mountain.
Did you climb it?
Never. I had never climbed Everest. It was my first attempt, and thankfully my successful attempt. I understand and I know, but I've been a mountaineer my whole life, and so my whole life has been training.
I'm sorry, I've been so engrossed in Mark Inglis' story that I didn't ask for any questions from you guys. But I'll tell you what, you could still use Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, HRISHIKAY, and facebook.com/radio1.mum, and you could drop it on the timeline inbox and maybe post the show. I'd still tweet back to you asking Mark if those questions come in. But Narayan Kannan, thank you so much. Despite me not bringing it up, you've asked a question. Mark, does cinema accurately portray or capture the struggles and challenges of mountaineering? Has any in the past impressed you for its realism? Please answer that.
Only two, really, at the start. Documentary-wise, Everest Beyond the Limit, Discovery Channel. They filmed our expedition, not because of me, just because of the expedition, and that was the first true insight into the challenge of Everest. And then most recently, the movie all about the May of 1996, when two of my very good friends, Andy and Rob, both died. Everest, the movie, has just come out, and it is the closest that you'll ever see to Hollywood and realism merging together to tell an amazing story, a tragic story, but they did it superbly well.
And you did consult on one too. Which one is that?
I've done some consulting on movies, yes, and including The Vertical Limit. Yeah, that's the...
I have to say that Mark's summiting Everest was also not without an incident, and if you could just hold up your fingers in front of the camera, there was frostbite. How many degrees was it when you climbed Everest?
It was a very cold day for us. It was minus 50. 2006 was a difficult year. 11 people died on Everest. There was one person died on the day that we summited. I couldn't help him, unfortunately, for that. I often get blamed. But it was so cold that I had frostbite in my fingers. I've lost the tips of 5, I guess. As I say, I can't do a high 5 anymore, but I can do a high 3.5.
Yeah, that's a wonderful positive way of looking at it. Just to fill the gaps in, you said you were a winemaker, and then, obviously the Paralympic silver medal happened, and of course you summited Cook many times, and eventually Everest, but in between there was life as a scientist.
Yes, I was very lucky. It's when I had my legs cut off back in 1982, you couldn't be a double amputee search and rescue mountaineer. It just wasn't done. So I had to do something else. So I retrained. I got a degree. I've got a first-class honours degree in human biochemistry. And I was a scientist. I'm a molecular geneticist by trade. So I work on people's DNA, looking at... for many years on how to detect childhood leukemia early. And so I worked in a medical school in Christchurch in New Zealand, and I did that up until I saw an advert in the paper, and it was for a winemaker, and I thought, I'd like to do that. And so one of the great things I've had is the ability to look beyond what I'm doing into the next thing. And so I'm the world's worst employee, Show me something once, and once I have it nailed, I need to do something else. So, which is why I spend a lot of my time working around the world helping people change.
Lovely. If you want Mark to speak at your community or wherever you deem it fit, so it's info@speakingminds.com, 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 and it would definitely be life transforming. Listen, this has been special. Thank you very much for rolling in. I've got to ask you the cliched question, but not cliched in your case. It's
just so difficult. I always dread the question, what are you doing next? No more big mountains. I've lost too many bits. So no more big mountains, but there are other big mountains in so many other different ways, and one is to transform people's thinkings into what is disability. Well, it's actually ability with 3 letters tacked on the front. Get rid of those 3 letters. Everyone has ability. Let's celebrate the ability of others, and we need to put some resources in, but that should always create ability, and that's my real challenge for life.
Thank you very much, Mark. Cheers. Thank you.